All right, we are ready to roll. Welcome to For the Sake of Search. My name is David, and I'm your host. This episode has been brought to you by Relevan, Search That Sells. And today we have with us Dom, product manager for OpenSearch at IBM. Dom, can you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah.
So my name's Dom. I've been in IT for pushing 30 years now. First 10 years is probably all development. My first job was writing Ada for submarine command systems. So shout out to anybody who remembers Ada as a programming language. And since then, it's really been a builder of systems, whether it's moving away from being hands-on development. I've worked in product management, engineering. I've even worked in pre-sales for a little while as well. So current role, though, is building the product story around OpenSearch for IBM, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Yeah, and we're happy to have you. Also, congratulations. I watched your keynote. For those who are listening, you should go watch his keynote because it is fantastically laid out. And, for only being in search for a little bit, you've done a really great job of summarizing some really hard problems. And one of those ones I want to dive into today is let's talk about what does intent mean in like modern search.
Yeah, and as you said, I think perspective I'm trying to bring is a long time in IT, but probably only the last couple of years really in the search side of things. A lot of my career has been in integration and consulting. I just spent a lot of time in API management. So the perspective I'm bringing is just what I'm seeing, particularly from how businesses look at it. And I think intent can mean multiple things. But I'll start with kind of the query intent because that's the thing I think is best understood and
Yeah,
most mature. And some of it's obvious. Now, if we understand a bit more about what someone's querying for, we can better serve them.
right.
But if you double click on that, I think as search matures and search is thought of more as a business, it
Mm,
also gives us other consequences. So if we understand the intent, we can better serve them with the technology we use. So is this very keyword centric? Great, we'll use lexical search. Is this a more open-ended question that's needing natural language approaches? So we'll use semantic and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the technical side of thing. But what I'm increasingly seeing is also what's the cost.
mm.
So is lexical search the cheaper option? Is that the correct thing to do based on the search? Is semantic search going to give us something deeper? Do we want to support different kinds of semantic search as well? So I think query intent is where I'd start that from in terms of how you can better serve your customers understanding that intent.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And actually that cost is so important. I think this is the one thing a lot of people don't think through completely is not every search you're going to get the value out of, adding something like vector search. I can say from our rollout of vector search at GitHub, it is incredibly expensive. And you do kind of have to look for every place where you're like, all right, is vector search really the right mechanism here? Can we just talk about that? Like what are the
Yeah.
different types of search you see there that like maybe vector search isn't the best or maybe it's like a really good fit for?
Yeah, and I think the other thing I would add into this one is we're on this kind of AI juggernaut journey where this is
Yeah.
it's the conversation every single time, and I think semantic search and vector search has come along with that, and it brings some of that hype with it as well. I think it's seductive
Yeah.
semantic search. It's this mathematical model. Oh, it's math, so it must be right, and
Yeah.
that's kind of idea. And it's got this pure idea, but relevance in the end, which is what we want to give the best result, is a messy thing. It's
Yeah.
not just a mathematical model. So it's understanding again from the intent, what's the best thing we can do to serve the end user. So if you're going to bring in these different ideas, then that's when you need to deeply understand, what the benefits of these things. It's not just about bringing the coolest new thing in there as well. I'll give an example of this. A customer we work with, they were a German parts manufacturer. So they had folks walking around the warehouse using their handheld devices, and they weren't happy with the quality of the search they were getting there. And these were specialists looking for product manuals or looking for inventory. And so the IT team behind that, they'd read lots of things about AI. Their
Mm.
CEO wants to do lots of things on AI. They had a vector database. Oh, great, this is a semantic problem. But as they looked at it, back to your point, the costs started adding up. They had a lot of product information. They had a lot of product catalogs that they were vectorizing it, and they're thinking lots about their ingestion pipelines. How should I chunk this up? What kind of embedding should I create? Should I create multiple embeddings? Do I need multi-vector representation? And you could imagine the costs at this point.
Yeah.
So we came in to talk to them, and partly because they were frustrated that it's like, this is crazy. We didn't think this was that big a problem, and it's the costs are getting out of control. But the gap had been a little bit that the hype curve had taken over, but also they'd not really understood the users. These were specialists. So going back to query intent before, part of query intent is understanding who is querying. Now, this is difficult sometimes because you don't know all of your users. Somebody anonymously querying on the internet, who are they? But they knew these folks. And again, they're specialists. And what do specialists understand? They understand jargon. They use keywords. Jargon and keywords. I've kind of heard that before somewhere. That rings a bell. Lexical. And so if you're deep into search, you would know this. And again, I've learned this in the short period I've been in search, that those are sort of triggers that should take you to that lexical outcome. So what we said is, well, great, let's take the basics of the information. Let's take the metadata around all of this. Let's build a lexical index behind that one. And guess what? Let's look at the queries that are being done, and let's talk to the users in terms of what we're doing. And they're using part number X721D. Great. X2171D. Let's use a lexical search, and we'll pull back. Oh, look, all of the product manuals are there. Now, there's downsides of that. I'm not saying lexical is a silver bullet the same way semantic isn't. There's problems on that one. But we really solved 80% of their problem doing that. Now, 20% of their problem was a semantic issue. They had management who are not specialists, who didn't know all the keywords, wanted to put in some semantic queries. They're going, okay, do you want to spend like 90% of your budget solving 20% of the problem? Because we reckon we could solve 80% of the problem and about 10% of the costs they're looking at.
Yeah.
That's the question. Now, it's a simplistic example in some ways. There's edge cases and lots of things in there. But again, not getting swept up by the AI hype curve and thinking like vector search and semantics are solving everything, super important. And really understanding the intent, not only of the queries, but of the users. And it's a classical thing as old as time. If you don't understand your users, then you're not going to necessarily give them the right solution. But I think we need to double click on that one and take that very much that outside in a view of the solving the problem, not forget the traditional techniques that have worked for the longest time.
Yeah, actually, and I think what you brought up there also is a key point. And I think I want to highlight this for everybody, because it's not that this company, could not have built this search. It's that they probably didn't have the expertise on their team to know, like, hey, we can accomplish 80%, like you said, of our goals with lexical search. And I think that's the thing. Most people think, oh, it's a database. You drop data in, you get data out. But there are so many extra things that get layered on top of good search experiences. Like really great example might be like a synonym graph. You might have some, like you said, jargon that translates. You just type in this 3-letter acronym and it should really match also documents that have the entire word. So yeah, and I think that's the hard part is, not a lot of people recognize just how much goes into making a good search experience, even with lexical search. The semantic search does feel very much like that easy button, but especially in the case of something where someone's typing in a product ID, it's not going to embed. And as a result, you will get like no results, garbage results, weird results. There's a lot that can happen there.
Now, and what is old is new comes in, because even if you solve this kind of problem for the lexical search, it doesn't take it away from the semantic search. And we know that generic off-the-shelf large language models are not going to understand jargon. So there's more and more being done. And there was a really good talk given actually at OpenSearch by Sam Herman in terms of what he went through as well. There's more things we can do to inject jargon into the semantic world, and how do you improve your vector embeddings over time and not have to re-embed them. That problem is all over the place. But again, you could disappear down a rabbit hole. Oh, I want to inject jargon into my semantic search and not have to re-ingest all my embeddings and things. What is the problem you're trying to solve for? It's difficult sometimes because you get swept along with it.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because we were talking about the, age of AI, and LinkedIn just a little bit put out an article. I mean, it was beautiful. It was they were talking about how they're using now small language models to basically fine-tune results, or not fine-tune, re-rank. Sorry, re-rank is the right term there. Re-rank results, and they built this entire orchestration platform, and it's like PhD level work. But it comes back down to that is going to be expensive. So, you're looking at like you've got the best search experience in the world, supposedly, because you've built this very complicated, small language models, and they're trained by other small language models, and this whole pipeline just to make search a little bit better. But at what cost? And not every company is going to be able to afford that cost. And I hope LinkedIn was able to recoup their costs on that. And hopefully the ad for search is there. But yeah, that is something that I wonder about. Is how much do we think that could help?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. So let's talk about this identity crisis in the age of AI, right? We've talked about similarity and relevance. Would you mind like just double clicking on those terms for our users? Just like what's the difference between similarity and relevance in your mind?
Yeah, and this ends up being a religious argument as much as
Yeah.
a mathematical one. So you'll get different people talking about it. Relevance in the end, if you talk in simple layman terms, is am I getting the best results back that are most relevant to the query that was answered?
Mm.
Similarity can help with that in terms of the mathematical representation. So I've taken my 10,000 pictures of cats. Great. I've embedded them all, they're on the database. Now I upload my neighbor's cat's picture. Okay, I create an embedding of that and I can do a similarity. So I can find things that's similar. Now,
Mm.
simplistically, that works okay. But we know there could be other things that enter into it. We knew, again, going back to knowing a user, your user maybe have a high preference for a certain kind of cat.
Mm.
Do you need to blend that into the results? Okay, you may have cat pictures that have been uploaded for the last 5 years. What are the best ones? Is it the more recent ones, or what kind of boosting? It's a very silly, simplistic example, but if
Yeah.
you want to boil it, I always like the idea of embedding pictures is a very simple way of thinking about similarity. So the mathematical nature of the vectors being as close together in the vector space is one signal. But again, if you think about search at its heart, it's about blending signals together.
Yeah.
And you can go crazy blending too many signals as well, but relevance ultimately needs a number of signals together to actually give you that messy picture.
Yeah.
And it's something that can be built over time, and it can be about the journey of search as well. It's not just about something the intent initial query. I think there's a whole discussion you can have then about how do you build out intent over a journey as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And actually going to down into that images example a little bit. And, I think of someone like Getty Images. It's I feel like a perfect example where you could have two almost exactly identical pictures of the exact same cat. And one can be encoded as JPEG and it's 500 pixels by 500 pixels. The other one could be, 4K, full color gamut, PNG or whatever, raw. I don't know. I'm not a huge photo nerd, but one of those is going to be more relevant to the end user. If someone's looking for clip art, it's going to be the very tiny pixely image. The other one is probably more for the professionals who are looking for something to, showcase or to extract for some of their work. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was like a perfect example.
Yeah, and then understanding that context is important. I take that further in terms of journey intent as well.
Yeah,
It's great if we can understand the initial query, and it's great if we know something about David who's searching, we know his preferences and everything else.
yeah,
But the journey of search is not always a one-hit wonder, and there can be a tendency to go towards, well, I've got to give it in one answer.
yeah,
Search is often a journey, it's an exploration, so it's multiple ones. So understanding over multiple queries what they're doing can again also be really important. So take, for example, if you know for the original query is kind of vague, kind of sprawling, you can guess from that one, this is not like an exploit journey where they're looking to get down to an answer very quickly. It's going to take a number of iterations. So based on that, are we best off starting very broad and shallow? We give more results back in that sense. Do we want to do something maybe less expensive to start with as well? Because, okay, this is going to take multiple iterations to get to the end as well. And then what is the return on investment? But if we think of search as a product or as a business, you're trying to get to an outcome, and the outcome is a decision. So even if you start very broad, we'll assume at some point we're going to come to a point. So the
mm,
interesting thing there is, okay, the intent across the journey is changing. Now, this is maybe a slightly more advanced concept, but then at what point do you push? Now, push on a Amazon or something else, you're trying to buy a product, is get to a buying decision. Push on an exploration journey looking for a clip art for cats could be something else. But it's frustrating for a user as well if you stay too broad and shallow for too long.
Yeah.
So this gets quite nuanced in terms of how much context is enough, how many steps in the journey will they put up with to get to their answer in the end. When we talked before, I said you mentioned you looking at another website and you did lots of exploration and
Yeah.
you maybe never got to the end in terms of what it was, but you enjoyed the journey.
Yeah.
Again, that's good for you. Is that good for the provider of the website? There's a whole journey analytics thing there that really it's important, and understanding again the return on investment across the journey, not just one query.
Yeah, actually, it was funny. I was scrolling Facebook Marketplace, which is something that I like to do a lot. And I was thinking about this talk that we were going to be doing today. And that was one of the things I was thinking about is I'm like, I am here with absolutely zero intent to buy. I am coming solely because I just like sometimes seeing what's on Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes very weird stuff shows up on my feed and I enjoy that. Occasionally, I might actually go and purchase weird stuff. And that's great. But I also, to that point, hope Facebook isn't expending a lot of resources as I'm just scrolling and just kind of seeing what's around.
Yep.
Versus the occasional times when I do go to Marketplace and I'm like, I need this thing. I need a doodad that looks like this, serves this one function, and there, is where you hope they pull out all stops and get me right to what I need to do.
Well, exactly. And understanding product intent comes into that as well, because we
Yeah.
talk about an individual query, you can guess something on that one. You can guess out more from a journey over time. But if your product, say, it could apply to services as well. If you understand the products people are searching for, that also leans into it. So you now have this triangle of intent you can link together. The example I give on that one is if I'm looking to buy a sofa or a flat screen TV, like a big ticket item, you're probably not going to just go in, click the first thing, click buy, and done. You're going to go through that multiple times. So you can understand the journey on that one works in a certain way. Maybe you'll come back over several days because it's $1,000 and you're not going to spend $1,000 straight away. You want to think about it as well. So you inherently know those kind of products are going to lend itself to a certain journey, and all the things we said before are going to apply to that one. When does it explore? When does it get to exploit? When are you going to get to the final item? You also know for those kind of items that kind of the findability, the ability to find those items easily maybe matters a little bit less because you're going to go through multiple layers of refinement. Whereas if you've got an item like, I need to buy a new stationery set for my daughter because she may have left it at school again for the third time that week. That's more of an urgent thing, but also it's more explicit because I know what I kind of want. I'm not going to do multiple iterations on that one. And I better be able to find it quick, otherwise that product's not going to sell. So understanding that bit also makes sense in terms of the things I mentioned before, the techniques you apply. But I think also in terms of what does good look like, the search journey when you're buying a sofa versus buying a stationery set looks very different. But then are you going to use the same metrics in terms of number of clicks, click-through rates, and everything else? It's not fair to compare those. So understanding the inherent intent on a product not only helps you shape the journey for the user to get to the desired outcome, but also helps you assess whether things are working. In this age of impatience, we're forever changing algorithms, messing with our embeddings, maybe changing our boosting and everything else. And as we do that, and hopefully we're doing that with A/B testing to see if things are effective or not, there's going to be different impacts on the different products, the different users, the different kinds of journey they have. And again, you can go too far down the rabbit hole investing to all of this. And it's only like the really more advanced companies where search are really core to everything they do. They're going to go deep on this kind of thing. But I think all of us can learn little flavors of this and see which slithers make sense to put in our search experiences to improve the return on investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's interesting also thinking about the different ways you could measure that, right? So like the TV example was awesome because it's like, yeah, okay, I actually had this just recently where I bought a television and I visited the site probably 7 times. And, over the 7 times, I kept looking at it. I'd go back and forth on the features between 1 or 2 or 3 different TVs, and then I'd leave and then I'd come back, just as I'm kind of like waiting for the right time. Which is good because I enjoyed that, and, like, that was I don't know how to fun? I guess it was fun for me. I did but that's not something someone would normally want to measure or want to see, but, versus, the product search that you were talking about with the German parts manufacturer. Like, you have these
Mhm.
experts, and it's like they need it, and they just want it right then and there. So, maybe we could talk a little bit more about that. Like, what are the different ways you think you can measure search against business objectives? Like,
Yeah.
because search is more than just e-commerce. It is so many places.
Yeah, I think if you think about traditionally what we'd look at, it'd look like similarity scores, precision and recall, clicks, ranking, those kind of things. And they're important to understand when you're building it mechanically. But if we want to think about search as a business or search as a product, even we
Yeah.
want to productize it, what matters more? It's time to decision, I think, becomes more and more important. And to your
Yeah.
point, it's not all about e-commerce. So it's not all about a buying decision. It could be getting to a different kind of outcome. Did I find the wedding venue I wanted to do? All of those kind of things. I think confidence comes into it. Confidence for me is super interesting in the AI world because
Mm,
you'd have seen it. I see it. AI is always super confident
yeah.
in everything they do, and you'll be. I'm preparing for the keynote the other week, and you do all the outline and everything else, and you get some inputs from AI in terms of, okay, I want to rephrase this a little bit, and you get some feedback, and you might at the end say, oh, give me a review of the whole thing. Be really critical, as critical as you ask an LLM to be. It's still, oh, this is wow, this is
Yeah.
amazing, this is the best thing I've ever seen. But confidence in search can't have that same problem because
Mhm.
it's very subjective. Because in the end, the confidence of the results comes from the end user. So you can get likes, you can get feedback in that sense. But I think confidence can also be the other way around. If you're trying to drive a decision for someone in the end, their confidence in the data comes into it. But that's going to be guided by what you're presenting to them. It's
Mhm.
okay when you do a search if you're not confident in the results. That might sound perverse, but I
Yeah.
think transparency on that one can be really important. So again, I'm drifting away from your question a little bit, and it's difficult
No.
to measure confidence in that sense. But confidence, it can be many things, and it goes back to kind of the zero result paradigm as well. Traditionally, zero results was terrible in the search sense. Now it's a little bit more nuanced. Can
Yeah.
you learn from zero results? Um, you can still give next steps from zero results. And again, the expectation on search is not just providing information, it's driving the next best decision.
Yeah.
And the next best decision from zero could be something more creative in terms of what you show. Ultimately, you're trying to reduce uncertainty. So going back to your point, I would think about more business make. So time to decision, confidence that we have and confidence we're engendering in the end user as well, our ability to give clear next steps in that sense. And you can blend into that kind of the idea of how do you think about association differently?
Mm,
Because to go back to an e-commerce example for a second, the traditional kind of association aspect would be kind of the Amazon customers also bought on the right-hand side.
yeah.
But I think that becomes more nuanced in terms of the value of that over time. Going back to the examples before, if I'm doing the explore journey and I'm not sure what I want, the association bit can be interesting because it gives you an excuse to maybe do something a bit more left field. Because an explore journey could be multiple steps and refining over time. Can I jump ahead in that journey by maybe throwing a bit of a Hail Mary and think, well, maybe they mean this. So they're looking for sofas, but actually I'm going to put a deck chair on there. And maybe a perverse example, but
Yeah.
you can afford on the right hand side to do that one. That's super compelling to the user if you can jump ahead a couple of steps in terms of doing that
Yeah.
one. Whereas, again, what you're going to measure, does the association bit shorten the journey if you're doing an exploration journey? But it's different if you're doing more of an exploit journey. So I'm looking for that stationary set. I don't really want to see on the right hand side something completely left field, but I might want to have something that adds to my basket. So I might put some Triple H pencils on there as well because
Yeah.
they're closely related. Now that's a different kind of association and it's driving a different outcome. So again, I keep drifting away from your question, but
No,
going
no,
back to
I
your
think it's
question again,
perfect. Yeah.
there's two kinds of metrics you're doing there. The association in the SOFA case is about reducing time to decision. The association in the exploit case is increasing basket value. Now it gets
Mm.
complicated because I'm measuring two things very differently. But again, I have to understand the intent to know what metrics matter. And you probably have to measure both and then see which one you want to overlay on top to see if your search is working.
Yeah, actually, I love that because that brings us, so many people like focus in on search, right? It is, oh, it's the search bar and it's the results. But there is this whole experience around search, like you've just said. And like sometimes it's incredibly helpful. Like, for example, like Walmart has a, you frequently buy section. And I love that because sometimes I'm like, I got eggs and I forgot my toast, like I'm gonna have eggs, but no bread to put it on, which,
No one
uh,
wants to be there.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly, and that increases my confidence in going to Walmart or yeah, sometimes seeing things that are not what I want in my search results actually makes me feel like, oh yeah, no, I definitely don't want that TV. This one is most certainly the one for me. Makes me feel good, and it does get challenging because and actually we experience this at GitHub time and time again because there are so many people who do so many very strange things with GitHub search. And actually, we just put out a survey at one point to try and you know hone it down just a smidge, and we were just like, wow, it was even more than we ever thought. But I think that's good, and that's like just a reflection of like, hey, okay, there's still more work to be done here to help drive all these right people to their right search experience. And maybe like that's actually worth diving into a little bit, like we've talked about like little pop-ups on the side, people have seen oh, what is that? Google's little, people who search for this also ended up searching for this, Do you think there are any other like search surfaces that, maybe people don't recognize as search or don't know that could contribute to the overall search experience?
Yeah, and I'll answer that in a kind of a different way, going back to
Mm,
the AI point. What is search?
yeah.
I don't get too metaphysical about it.
Yeah.
Um, um, it it's changing in terms of the expectation. So search used to be providing information. As I mentioned before, it's now about driving the next best decision. That's a different expectation in terms of the surface area. I
Mm,
think it also comes into what does search drive. So in the world of increasing um, AI agents are searching for things in terms of the context they need to provide the next best decision as well. Many of the principles we talked about before apply. So
yeah.
you need to understand the intent of the agent in terms of it's pulling things through. We know the problems that occur with AI agents if they get the wrong information. It's frustrating for us if we don't get enough search results. It can be pretty catastrophic for AI if it doesn't get the right results, because then you're in the hallucination and the
Mm,
overconfidence thing we talked about before. If you go the other way in terms of too many results, it's frustrating for us. Oh, I've got to go through 3 pages of results to find my TV. Can't you narrow it down? It
yeah.
becomes an expensive problem with AI. You're burning a lot of tokens now,
Yeah.
pushing all of that context through. So, the definition of search as a surface area is changing. I think it goes into search as a business, thinking about which part of that problem it wants to own as well. And this came out a couple of weeks ago at OpenSearch Con in Prague as well. I was talking to a colleague there, and they were saying, I run a search consultancy, and we go in and they have a certain definition of what is search.
Mm,
And we'll be talking about all of the things we talked about. Okay, can we prove relevance? What's the ranking and everything else? But then sometimes part of the project gets taken away from this. Oh no, this is going to go into a RAG project. It's over there. Or they'll
mm,
hear about another AI agent that's getting built over there. Oh no, that's an AI thing. You don't need search in there. I think search has to take ownership of that
yeah.
in terms of all of that surface is part of the search problem. Because as I said, a lot of the same principles apply. And with the AI hype train, the danger is it'll come from the other side. AI will start trying to eat away at more and more of the search problem. Now, there's a symbiotic relationship there, and hopefully not a parasitic one. But all of these principles apply, and the folks building those kind of systems need to understand the principles of search. Otherwise, they're going to be
Yep.
alienated over time.
Yeah, and AI is not very good at pointing out when it's not getting the right results. I found that, actually, this is one of the really interesting things is a lot of AI agents now are using GitHub search. And I can always tell when it is an agent or when it is a person because the agents, I mean, they just throw everything into the search and they treat it just as this big bucket. And more often than not, I find that they don't find the results they're looking for
Mm.
because GitHub search, as of right now, is very much optimized for the person. It is optimized for people doing a couple keywords, finding these specific users that were mentioned, and I think that is going to change how we look at search, and how we start to build search surfaces. Like, I almost wonder, and this we might be getting way off here, but I almost wonder if there is a case for building a search interface for AI, a interface that AI can read from, understand, and use better. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and is this a search interface for AI, or is it a
Yeah.
search interface for AI developers? So
Yeah.
ultimately, these AI agents out there have not just magically come into existence. I'm sure there's probably is AI building AI in lots of places.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a whole Skynet conversation about that one. But ultimately, in the end, someone's built that.
Yeah.
So to go back to your example, why is that agent spamming your search interface? Well, they were prompted in some way to understand that. There was a description of the tool they're using, which is GitHub search in that sense, and how to use it.
Mm.
It sounds like they were given the wrong instructions, maybe part of the problem. So I
Yeah.
think I like the idea of being cognizant of the AI story changing. And again, you have to move with the times. You can't be a Luddite and go, oh, AI and everything else. It's part of the conversation. And it will work differently. So it's not just
Yeah.
about trying to reapply all of the old problems. But if people building these systems don't understand the fundamentals of search, you're
Mm.
going to get this kind of one. And it's a different kind of developer. So, in the past, you're building a web front end, and okay, that web developer didn't intimately know search, but they would take the time and understanding it, the APIs they're using to call the search interface and everything else. There was a contract, there was a conversation there.
Yeah.
AI developers now are caught up in this hype stream we talked about. There is infinite expectations of what they're trying to deliver. There
Yeah.
is zero time to do it as well. They're going to be in super fast cycle times.
Yeah.
If you think of another analogy to this one as well, when large language models came in initially, you see all the architecture diagrams, and the LLM was in the middle as the brain that everything sort of spouted out from. Because that cycles work really quickly. Now LLMs, it's a commodity. Oh, it's an API call. If I
Yeah.
don't like that LLM, I'll plug in another one later on. So with search, it's going to be the same thing. So who will win on the search? And providing, going back to your point, the search interface for AI will win with those developers because they have minimal time and patience to go through it. They're
Yep.
not search experts.
Yep.
The time to why will be super, super important because if it's not working, I know their AI agents hallucinating or something else, they want to understand that very quickly because it's a big problem. So understanding that, making it easy to use as possible. And there's lots of products doing more on that one. You can see at the moment, the OpenSearch project in terms of kind of the launchpad idea of putting in there, it's meeting those where they are. So that's part of that search interface for AI you're talking about, I think, is also that search interface for AI developers and
Mm.
anybody else coming into search who are thinking it very much as a commodity. They want good results as a service. They don't want to intimately understand all the intricacies of BM25 and this vector index and that vector index. They just want it to work.
Yeah. Actually, I think that might also be making a case for search agents. I've been thinking about this a lot because, search is a domain with so much expertise. I mean, from boosting to re-ranking and all of these, all these terms are pretty unfamiliar to the average developer. And like it would be handy to have like an agent that is helping you build search interfaces. And automating a lot of it. I think about this a lot. I
Absolutely.
wonder why a lot of search engines like OpenSearch or Elastic, Vespa aren't building interfaces also to automate some of the more boring parts of search. Like, hey, we have these synonym graphs. Like, why can't I just feed you a query stream, you know? And I mean, the user behavior project, UBI, for those who don't know, which is an open source, basically user logging system, I guess user logging, UBI, user behavior intersight. So basically what it does.
Too many acronyms.
I know, it's too many acronyms. Yeah, if only we had a synonym graph, you know, to.
We need an AI agent for acronyms as well.
we do. But it's kind of getting us there where we can start automating, I think, a lot of these workflows that are, you know, intuitive to us as developers, but maybe not so intuitive as someone who just wants a search that works.
Yeah, no, and I'm going to be an old man and say there's also a simpler version of that problem. And again, yeah. I go back to my previous experience being API manager. I was lucky to work when API management was coming out, and it was a cool thing. And the first few customers I had to talk to, you had to explain what an API is. And it sounds ridiculous now, years later. Well, they didn't know what API was, but it was there. But the idea of building experiences for different users came into it. If you look at that kind of the next iteration of what a much API management did, like MCPs, I think there's a role for it in there because the abstraction they provide can be really powerful. Now, out of the box, many search engines such as OpenSearch, they have native MCP servers. Great. Yep. So I'm making it easier. It's giving a very simplistic interface. Why can't we put more of that functionality in MCP services as well? So this is not necessarily an agent, but it's abstracting away some of this complexity. Because there's many patterns that have been done many times over. The example you gave before, there can be other ones as well. So I think there'll be a blend of these things. Let's do the MVP. Let's do the basics in terms of what we can abstract away, the very simple things. Let's make things more commoditized. And absolutely, let's have this expert search agent when you want to do something more and more complex as well. But we always need to look at the problems to solve. Again, we can go back to the German manufacturer, whatever else it is. What percentage of organizations are needing how advanced techniques in terms of what they're going to solve for the problem as well? Yeah. I'll give you another example. We've all hated chatbots forever.
Yeah.
And chatbots are getting better now. But even when the chatbots were pretty bad, a lot of people had chatbots. And if you talk to most organizations, they were working for the organization.
Yeah.
Now, a user might not say they're working for them because they'll say, oh, this is just terrible. But organization metrics are, okay, by having this not great chatbot, pre-LLMs, pre all of the kind of semantic search we can do now, they were managed to offload a reasonable percentage of call center calls to that one. And okay, maybe they can answer 60% of the questions of the user before they get frustrated and they mash the talk to somebody real button.
Yeah.
But that was enough. Now, expectations always rise over time. You know, and I joked with my kids back in the day when I had a push button TV with 3 channels, and now they've got Netflix and look at everything else. So I'm not saying we go back to the push button TV with 3 channels, but again, what is the problem you're trying to solve for? What is the ROI? I think the ROI thing is going to keep coming back as a critical component. A lot of CEOs have written a lot of very big checks based on AI. And when you target it and when you solve the right problem, super powerful. But what is the actual MVP?
Yeah.
Keep coming back to that. What's the minimum to solve the problem?
Yeah, and actually that all comes back to building good product. And to your point earlier, the German parts manufacturer adding semantic, if they, you know, went the consulting route, you know, they'd hire, you know, a consultancy that does exactly that, and then they end up with something that they're like, why did we do this? This was just a ton of money. Or, you know, ChatGPT will go and it'll make anything you ask it to. And that could be really great or really bad, depending on your user, you know. I've seen so many of these little like so many of these like vibe coded projects, and they just have like a certain feel to them because you're like, I have the sense that this user wanted to do something but had no idea how to describe it. And they let the, you know, Copilot go and build whatever it wanted, and it was unusable for people. Even OpenClaw, actually, have you played with OpenClaw at all, or been in?
I've not played with OpenClaw. Okay. I've tried to stay away from that rabbit hole.
I made an attempt to start OpenClaw, and it became very apparent to me that OpenClaw was built by AI for AI. It is what I would describe as the most human unusable product on the internet right now. And that's challenging because it takes a person to go and start it up the first time before AI can take over and it can start to tune and tweak itself. Um, but yeah, so I think that's gonna be really interesting to see. And
Yeah.
do you have actually any resources? Like, how have you started to get into search? I mean, you've been in tech forever. Forever. Sorry, you've been in tech for
It's
some
a
time.
little bit of grey hair there.
Yeah, but so as you've started getting into search, like where are you finding like you have some product sense, but how do you find to apply that specifically to search?
A lot of it, I think I always go back to talking to customers, talking to the end users.
Mm,
And I always enjoy the start of any journey when you talk about a new product or a new company. You can take that very naive approach. You can ask the dumb questions. I think going back to that side of things was really good. I think the Maven series of talks I found really useful as well. And they're pitched at multiple levels in terms of what you're going through as well. And I've been very lucky to work with colleagues, folks like Matt Overstreet I work with, who's been in search forever on that side of things. But my approach to any kind of learning journey is to look at the different points of view. So
mm,
I'm lucky at the moment. So on the product side, I think we work as a trio. So there's me, I say, with the broader, somewhat more generic background, bringing the product sense and the go-to-market sense. I work with Matt, who's very deep in this area. He's worked in a long time, worked a lot with Doug and Trey, who obviously masters in this area as well. So they have that side of things. And I work with another colleague, Batul, who comes from a different angle. She's a very deep technologist. She actually was from Oracle before, so a
mm.
different point of view there as well. So I think when you're learning a new area, I go to the experts, kind of the Maven talks I found good, talk to the end users because that's ultimately who matters. But then I always surround myself with the different points of view over time, and we keep course correcting each other. I mean, I joke we probably spend an hour every day because we're all based in different parts of the world talking, but it's kind of like replicating what would be the water cooler moment if we're in the office together,
Yeah,
and then doing that and occasionally having very painful conversation because I'll ask a dumb question and Matt will have to like sit me on his lap and explain in very simple terms what he means, or Batul will ask a very technical question from a different angle. That really accelerates my learning because it gets from different angles and it pressure tests.
yeah.
Because any learning you're going through, I think, has to be pressure tested. Um, my kids always complain about having to do tests and exams, but again, it's pressure testing those things really assesses your learning and see if you're moving forward and understanding it. And then having to go and do a keynote somewhere, a bunch of in front of search experts as well. That's another good way of pressure testing as well. And you get to find out in the end, whether you're credible.
Yeah, actually, I think that last part also is super key. And this is something that, like, a lot of people, they know the learning cycle. Oh, yeah, I go pick something up, I learn it, I talk to some people that may have done it before, and then I go do it. And I think that's all very valuable. But there is one more piece, which is the return piece, which is can you explain it to someone else? And I think I was reading something like that is where like 90% of retention happens is if you can verbalize it and explain it to someone else. And I just had a very similar experience where I'm writing a talk for Haystack, which is funny because this will probably come out after Haystack, but I'm writing a talk for Haystack and I was like going down deep into Elastic's binary quantization or better binary quantization actually. And I was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. There's this just piece about centroids that just is not clicking. And AI was very confidently telling me one thing. And I was like, I feel
I don't believe
strongly that that is
that.
not the case. So I reached out to Ben Trent from Elastic and I was like, hey, can you take just like 30 minutes to talk with me about this? Like, help me. Like, I'm missing something. And that is something I would encourage everyone to do. Like, even if you don't have search engineers or people with like decades of experience in search, the search community is reachable. It's reachable on Slack. There's the Search Relevance Slack, which is where I probably learned almost everything from search. The people on there, you mentioned Trey and all of them. And I just like, and Doug, of course, which is funny because I'm going to be talking to Doug at Haystack a lot. And I'm excited about that. But there is this whole community that you can go to and you can soak stuff up, learn it, but then also go and share it. And Dom, you came here to share too. So we're very happy.
No, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with today? What has been your takeaway here?
Yeah, no, and I think from I take an outside-in point of view. I think search has an opportunity to be a business, to be a product in that
Yeah.
sense, and move away from just providing information. That idea of driving next best decisions gives us a different opportunity. I think there's risks with the AI innovation in terms of that trying to take part of the conversation. I would encourage the search community in general to take ownership of that and understand what the role is and that sort of things. And reinforce your last point. I think I've been, you know, not surprised, but I've been very pleased to find that the community is so welcoming and so open to me asking lots of dumb questions on that sort of thing. So if you're looking for something new and interesting to get into, I think the search space is really interesting because ultimately, echoing a bit of the point before you said before, whether it's vibe coding or wherever else, I think AI is going to produce a lot more stuff.
Hmm.
And people are going to want to be able to find things in there and search for the most relevant things. So I think AI will also provide an opportunity for search to be more and more important to
Yeah.
navigate through the AI slop and the data swamp and find something relevant to drive your next best decision.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dom, for joining us. This has been For the Sake of Search. And again, brought to you by Relevan. If you would like to know more about Relevan and a search experience that feels natural, no matter how big or small your company is, make sure to follow along as we are building live. Thank you, and we'll catch you all next time. Take care.